it's human nature. There is some subjectivity when you have two dogs that are equal as far as their conformation. You can look at which one has a little more zhuzh, which one is giving it, who wants it more. Like there can be those fine things that can tip you over to one versus the other. So there's, we're all human and sometimes there's a little bit of that, of course, in there.
He's anti-Shih Tzu. I've always said it. Bro, like that kind of stuff. Interesting.
The Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show is back this week, Dave.
Yes, it is, Shazier. Forget about those Knickerbockers. Westminster is the hottest ticket in New York this weekend.
Also in basketball, we have the greatest rivalry. Steph versus LeBron is back. I can't wait. And Star Wars Return of the Jedi is making a comeback just in time. May the 4th be with you. From Wondery, I'm Ryan Shazier.
And may the 4th be with you. I'm Dave Damashek.
And this is Don't Call It a Comeback.
Don't call it a comeback. I've been waiting on this moment my whole life. Can't call it a comeback. Everybody to your feet, make arenas rise. Yeah, I'm saying from the left to right, we get it on tonight. We do it all, but we don't back down. Just give me one shot, one chance, I'ma take it. Fixing up the game, but these records I keep on breaking.
Hey, Shek, let's get into this dog show comeback.
Fine, let's go way back to 1877 when the Westminster Kennel Club was founded in New York City. Since then, the Westminster Dog Show hasn't skipped a single year, persisting through wars, the Great Depression, the pandemic.
It's the Pekingese. Clara Alford and Chick Son finally win the grandest prize of dogdom, Best in Show at Westminster. What a thrill this must be. Best in Show at the 1960 Westminster.
So the show rolls on for another year.
I'm very honored to announce that at the 146th Annual Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show, the Best in Show winner is the Bloodhound.
Now, point of clarification, this isn't just a cutest dogs competition. This is the Super Bowl of purebreds. She's the Westminster Kennel Club's Director of Communications, spokesperson, and the on-air analyst for its iconic New York Dog Show on Fox and FS1, Gail Bisher. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. 147th. I mean, this is history.
Thank you so much, Gail. I'm really looking forward to talking to you about this. So I actually want to ask you a question because we might have a few audience members that are unfamiliar. So can you explain the competition and how it works at Westminster?
Sure. Well, the primary competition is the dog show, which is what you see televised primarily, also agility. But the dog show is the biggie. That is the anchor of Westminster Week. And what is being judged there is the conformation of the dogs, CONFORM, conformation of the dogs. And so each dog, each breed has a written standard, and that written standard is based on what the breed was originally bred to do, whether it's herding, hunting, retrieving, whatever it is that they're originally bred to do. And so when the judges are examining them, and people may think it looks odd that they're getting such a detailed exam, but it's important, like the rib cage, for example. If it's a certain type of rib cage, it's going to be able to be a better swimmer, first, let's say, for example, or if it has a flatter rib cage, that may enhance its speed because it has to go over long distance and fast. And so all of the parts of the dogs are written in this standard. The judges study those standards. And so basically what they're doing is judging which dog in the ring most closely resembles the written standard. So it's not the beagle against the Afghan. It is the beagle more closely resemble the written ideal versus the Afghan hound, which is all based on the original purpose of that dog.
Boy, that's interesting right out of the gate. And this show, as you know, is called Comeback. I am not going to bring back any of Fred Willard's jokes to you now. I'm sure you've heard them ad nauseum from Best in Show. Instead, let's talk about the judges and what goes into being that. What's the background of how you get to be one of these judges?
Sure. Well, the American Kennel Club is the governing body of dog shows. So it's kind of like the NFL. And then there are all these dog clubs like the Westminster Kennel Club, which was the first member of the AKC. We're all members of AKC and we follow their rules and regulations. And so they're the ones that license judges and have the education, continuing education for all the judges and all the testing for judges. And so it takes a long time to get your judge's license and to keep adding on different breeds so that you could judge Best in Show at Westminster, for example. It's really a lifetime commitment. By the time you get to that level, you've been in it a very long time and you're very well respected in the way that you judge and that you're following the rules and you're following the standards and you've built up a reputation for yourself, but also it just takes experience. It takes a lot of experience to get to the level of judging at Westminster.
I have to ask, let me, what to follow up on that, Shazier, let me jump in. We've become consumed. We're all cynics now as sports fans. We don't like the referees, the officials, and everything else. Has there been a controversy like that guy voted for the Australian Shepherd because he loves Australian Shepherds more than other breeds? Does anything like that ever happen?
Oh, all the time. That happens all the time. Like, especially if you lost, right? Then something was up, right? There had to be some connection, right? There has to be something. But no, I mean, it's human nature. There is some subjectivity when you have two dogs that are equal as far as their conformation. You can look at which one has a little more zhuzh, which one is giving it, who wants it more. Like there can be those fine things that can tip you over to one versus the other. So there's, we're all human and sometimes there's a little bit of that, of course, in there.
He's anti-Shih Tzu. I've always said it. Like that kind of stuff. Interesting.
It's so funny. One of my good friends, he always told me, he was like, when something goes wrong, the first thing you do is look for somebody to blame. If you can't find nobody to blame, then something was wrong. So it's he's like, you never blame yourself. So the one thing that's still intriguing to me that a lot of people don't know is America's favorite dog. I don't know if it holds the title anymore, but America's favorite dog, the Golden Retriever, has never won.
A lot of the top dogs, as far as popularity, have not won. So like the Labrador Retriever was one of the top AKC breeds for many, many years and was recently knocked off by French Bulldogs.
Yeah, French Bulldogs.
Frenchies are really popular now. And last year there was a Frenchie who won Reserve Best in Show. His name was Winston, and his co-owner is a football player, Morgan Fox.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so Winston is still out showing and most likely will be at Westminster. We don't have all the entry information at this point, but, Winston coming back would be a great story.
Do you think that America's favorite underdog can ever come back and get a win?
Well, that's the beauty of Westminster is that everyone has a chance. Everyone definitely has a chance. We're a champions only show. So you already have to have reached a certain level, a certain title to even be able to enter. But once you're there, there's 2,500 dogs in 7 different groups, 40 judges. So there's a lot of variables, right? Who entered, who didn't enter. There could be a judge change at the last minute, like if a judge becomes ill or something, right? So there could be things that happen that, this judge really likes your dog because they've judged them before. And then that judge isn't your judge anymore, right? So then it's like, oh, now what? So there's just a lot of different variables to how it's all going to net out. So I would say anybody has a chance. As far as why a Golden hasn't won or why a Labrador hasn't won, I think it just comes down to the competition, the competition of the day on that day, because that's what the judges have to use is that day. How is the dog that day?
Sort of as a brand, kind of like the New York Yankees are to baseball. There's a dominant breed, and it is the Fox Terrier. 15 Best in Shows, more than double any other breed. What gives here? Why are they the dominant force among dogs?
Yep. Well, the reason for that is history. So back in the 1800s, when Westminster first started, terriers were very common. They were one of the most common breeds in the Northeast, primarily because they're ratters. And so they get rid of vermin. So they were very common in farms and even in the city. And so there were just a lot of terriers and not as many of the other breeds. There weren't as many hounds, there weren't as many sporting breeds. And so numbers wise, they just had the advantage at that point. And so they really built up their wins early on. Now, there have been a few more in more recent times that have won. But we have a really competitive terrier breeder group in the UK and Ireland. There's lots of breeders that still import and bring and export wire fox here. So we get some of the best.
Let's talk about Winston. So he pretty close to the most successful dog making his return. Do any dogs ever, after success, do they ever get too fat and happy, let themselves go? They don't keep their eye on the ball anymore, show up a little slovenly, like he doesn't have the passion anymore.
The dogs, when they come to Westminster, they're at their peak. They're at their physical peak. They're at their competitive peak. They're already on a roll. They've already been showing at different shows and doing well. And they're already top ranked dogs in the country. And so, you don't come to Westminster unless you're ready. You don't start a young dog off or a really old dog. You have to get them right in their prime when they're peaking, right?
Which is when? 3?
Generally, it depends on the breed, of course. Some mature slower than others, but I would say 4 to 7, 4 to 6 is probably
my dog might have a chance.
Oh, there you go. So they're mature. They've settled. They're usually in great condition then, and that just seems to be the peak. Now for the females, we had a German Shepherd win in 2017. Rumor was her name, and after she won Best in Show, she went and became a mommy. That was her next step because part of the judging of the dog show is based on the judges are picking the next, they're evaluating breeding stock, basically, saying this dog closely resembles a standard is the one who should be used for the next generation, right? And so Rumor did that. And actually 2 of her puppies were trained and went on to become PTSD military veteran service dogs. And so we love stories like that where, these show dogs are giving back to their communities.
So, Gail, I want to ask you a question because we've seen your beautiful dog on your picture before we even got to see you. So, how does someone, enter their dog to Westminster and to be in a dog show? And then also, how do you go about picking your wonderful dog?
Oh, that's got to be so much pressure on the dog community for you to walk in and be like, oh, do you see who's here? Gail is picking one of us. Oh, I mean, that must be nerve-wracking for the dogs, right?
The easiest way for somebody who's interested in learning about dog sports is you can go to the Westminster Kennel Club, westminsterkennelclub.org, or to the American Kennel Club, WKC.org. There's all kinds of information about the different types of dog sports and how to get started. But basically, you're going to research dog clubs in your area because they're all over the country. And so there could be one, there's the Quincy Kennel Club in Illinois, and there's the Des Moines Kennel Club. They're everywhere. And so you can find a local club and find classes and like-minded people that can help and mentor. Now, as far as me picking my dogs, well, I grew up in bearded collies, so I like really hairy, herding dogs, very friendly, outgoing. But the grooming after a while became too much. So then I went to miniature dachshunds. I lived in Manhattan. I wanted something small, low grooming, not a ton of exercise. I mean, they need exercise, but not like a sporting breed, right? And then now I live in Connecticut and have a yard again and everything. So now I do have a Vizsla and an English Cocker Spaniel, so 2 sporting dogs. But I usually, for me, I look for how much grooming it's going to take. Do I like the temperament? I like upbeat, happy dogs that love everybody. That's just what I'm interested in. And I don't need protection necessarily, but a watchdog to alert and let me know if somebody's coming. But I also like to look at, are they mobile? Is it easy? It's going to be easy to take them with me or not? I mean, there are a lot of things that you need to consider before bringing a dog to your home. And so that's what the dog show is really about. I mean, there's the evaluating breeding stock and all of that. End of the day, Westminster is a public education event and has been since 1877. We want people to touch the dogs, meet the dogs, learn about the different breeds, and make sure you get the right one for your family.
It is a great showcase, Westminster. I'm not telling you anything, but the nonprofit aspect in embracing dogs, literally and figuratively, is the best thing of all. But make me look smart here. Make Shazier look smart. Let's say he's hanging out with his pals watching this year's event. Who are we looking for to take home the gold? Best in show. Give us some insight. What breed should we be looking out for? Is there a particular dog we should be looking at to bring home the gold or the medal or the ribbon?
Well, I would say any of the dogs that are number one in their group are ones that you should be watching. There's a terrier named Stash that they're all top winning dogs. So, it's kind of hard to pick. There's Stash, the terrier. There's Winston, of course. There's an Afghan hound, beautiful Afghan hound coming. It's 2,500 dogs. Come on. They're all beautiful and they all have a chance. So I'm not going to give you that. But what I can give you to make you look really impressive in front of your friends is to have a few lines. You can say, ooh, I like the way that neck flows into the shoulders, right? Or you could say, ooh, look at that side gate. She's got great extension, right? So you could say something like that. Or you could say something like, oh, that tail is too high. That tail's too high for me.
Side gauge, is that what it is? I like that one. That's the one I'm going to go with.
Gait is a big deal. And so the judges watch the dog go way back and they watch him run around the ring. So gaiting, G-A-I-T, is very important. So anything you say about gait, you could even say, oh, that handler needs to slow that dog down.
Yeah, that's probably Dave right there. He's probably walking a little too fast.
Well, I am interested in the role that the humans at the end of the leash, what their involvement is with the whole thing. And like the judges, you say everybody's human. Do you ever notice that the judges get swayed positively or negatively by the dog handler?
No, but you know what? The handler makes a huge difference in the judging, the judge's chance to judge, because you get 2 minutes per dog to judge. And so if the dog isn't behaving or under control or looking perfect in that small window, you've blown it, right? You've lost your chance. So it's the handler's job to make sure that dog looks right when it needs to look right. It has to be perfect for that exact moment. And so there are two types of handlers. There's the breeder owner handler, who's someone who has a regular job and just does this on weekends for a hobby. And then there are professional handlers that this is what they do for a living. And they go to shows every week and they're paid to do it. And so you see both in the ring at Westminster. We love both types of handlers. But the handler makes a huge difference, because if they're nervous, it goes right down the lead. It goes right down the lead and will affect the dog's behavior, because then the dog is thinking, well, you can feel it and you can smell, that dogs can smell if they're nervous, right? So they will feed off of your energy. So you have to be very calm, cool, and collected, and very confident in your animal and in your performance together. And so that just, believe it or not, you can make a dog believe in themselves. You really can. By the way you work with them, the way you touch them and manage them, you can build their confidence and make them think, yeah, I am incredible and you should look at me, right? So the handler has a huge influence on the dog in general, just because they are in control.
Is there an equivalent of like because I mentioned the ribbon or the trophy or whatever. I'm not familiar with what the physical award is. Like the Stanley Cup, if the players get to drink out of that, the dog couldn't pick up the cup, but is there a bowl of some sort that the dog gets to drink out of and only the champion gets to drink out of as the award?
Well, that's a good idea. We haven't incorporated that, but there are several trophies, but we have not incorporated that exact thing, but we do have a champion's lunch. So the best in show dog goes on maybe a tour, of course, the next day. And we do have a champion's lunch, we call it, where a chef or a notable will give the dog chicken or steak on a silver platter, and the media is there and they cover it, and it's a lot of fun. Maybe you should try out for that position. What do you think?
I love, not the dog. You mean the
handler. I have one last question I want to ask you before we let you go. So like professional athletes, obviously when it comes to eating and the nutrition is a really big role. What role does that play in the dogs for the show?
Well, nutrition is a huge part of it because it has to do with the digestion, which is a big, as you know, we all need to have everything working inside properly. And then coat and skin, obviously. And just also it's for the stamina, because these dogs, if they're going to different shows around the country, travel is stressful. It becomes stressful. They get used to it because they show a lot, but it still can be stressful. And so just having that extra base, really helps. And so, so nutrition is a big part of it. And, we're very proud that Purina Pro Plan is in their 12th year of supporting the Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show. And so, and I believe 13 of the last 14 best in show dogs were Purina dogs. So the other part of it is exercise. They have to have controlled exercise that isn't just running around out in the yard. They do that, but then they also do have actual workout regimens for these dogs.
bottom line, Shazier, I think what she's saying, it's all avocado shakes and yoga beforehand. That's how you get to be right as an athlete. Awesome stuff. Really fascinating. Last thing I want to know is make sure the audience knows where and when will new fans be able to watch Westminster this year.
So, of course, to watch Westminster, you have to tune in to Fox for the Masters Agility Championship. And then the dog shows on FS2 during the day and FS1 at night for the big ending, Best in Show. And all of the full schedule is on westminsterkennelclub.org. And of course, we have live streaming as well that Fox is providing. So we're thrilled that we have 16 and a half hours of coverage of dog show. So you can get a lot of dog show in there.
Excellent, excellent stuff. Thanks so much for joining us. I'll say it again. You can watch Gail in the 147th Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show at the historic USTA Billie Jean King National Tennis Center in Queens from Saturday, May 6th to Tuesday, May 9th across Fox, FS1, FS2, and Fox Sports and Westminster Kennel Club digital platforms. Great stuff, Gail. Thanks for the time. We appreciate it. Can't wait to see who wins. I'm going to drop some of those lines you said. And when we get back here, which NFL team set themselves up for a comeback in the draft this year? Find out on the Checkdown next.
Don't call it a comeback.
All right, time for some other comeback stories in the news we need to give a look at this week. This is the Checkdown. All right, you mentioned it at the top of the show there, Shazier. Steph Curry, LeBron James, the playoff rivalry is back for the first time since 2018. Shazier, if these guys didn't overlap in their prime, would either have more rings than Michael Jordan?
I definitely think LeBron would probably have more rings. I would say it's a little bit harder for Steph. And the reason I would say it's harder for Steph is because LeBron has been doing it for so long. Steph teams have been dynamic, and he's probably been on the greatest team ever assembled with Steph, Clay, Draymond, and Kevin Durant. That's probably one of the greatest teams just ever assembled. Even if you don't add Kevin Durant, just built from scratch, no trades, nothing like that, just built from scratch. But they're getting older, so you seeing how they're starting to. The time is kind of catching up to them. LeBron, he's been in the championship conversation since he's been a rookie. Obviously, he didn't win any championships at that early of an age, but since he's been such a young player, he's always been in the championship conversation. And LeBron has 4 championships right now. Am I correct? He has 4 championships right now.
Is that right?
And he ran into Steph, who also has 4 championships. And the 3 of those championships that Steph has, LeBron has met him in the finals. So I feel LeBron would have had a better shot because he's actually went to 9 straight finals. Unfortunately, he lost to Steph and Clay in that team 4 times out of that. But I still think, 3 times out of that, but I still think that LeBron would have more rings if it wasn't for our Mr. Light Skinned fella Stephen Curry and his squad.
I think that's fair and good breakdown of how they would have reached more titles, respectively. I think the thing is what I love most in sports, underdogs are great, but the guy who had all the expectation before he ever played an NBA game was LeBron, and that he exceeded those expectations is pretty remarkable stuff. And we've diminished his career a little bit because of the way he announced he was going to Miami, not that he went to Miami. He got dinged for that, and I don't think we make a big enough deal about, as you say, the streak of finals appearances is remarkable. He dragged some remarkably bum rosters into the NBA finals. So I tip my hat to both these guys. Steph Curry now firmly in the top 10 all time. And who knows, maybe one or both isn't done winning some titles yet. Meantime, the NFL draft is an optimistic time for everyone. Did you hear? Everybody got a letter A grade if you look hard enough online to find one. I don't know what that says about society that we can't announce that somebody had a terrible draft. But either way, which franchise best set themselves up for a comeback this season in the draft, Shazier?
Man, so if we're talking about comebacks and trying to build up through the draft, I would say that the Chicago Bears did a really good job with their draft. I thought they did a good job. I know I would like to be a homer, and I would like to say that the Pittsburgh Steelers, they had a great draft. But one team that I would have to put into this mix, and I don't think it's really saying that they're coming back, but just saying that they're constantly reloading. And I'm gonna have to go with the Georgia Bulldogs. And what I mean by the Georgia Bulldogs, I mean by the Philadelphia Eagles, because obviously
picking up what you were laying down there.
They're obviously drafting every single guy that played for the Georgia Bulldogs. But you think about it, they won two straight back-to-back championships, and it's like, hey, why not bring that same culture to the NFL? They almost won a championship last year, and then they get Jordan Davis. They already had Jordan Davis. Now they get Jalen Carter, and they get Nolan Smith. I think they're doing some great things. And then obviously, if you add the trade that they got with DeAndre Swift in as well, I feel like a team that set themselves up through the draft and for the regular season and the seasons to come is the Philadelphia Eagles. I feel like they did a phenomenal job. And then I know I picked two Keystone State teams, but man, it was really hard for me to watch the draft and not think about what the Philadelphia Eagles are doing while I was watching it.
Well, sure, and they're already the known entity based on what they did last year, and the Steelers hired Andy Weidel away from Philadelphia, who was the wizard of loading up at the line of scrimmage on the eastern side of Pennsylvania. Now he's in Pittsburgh, and he replicated exactly that with Omar Khan and company, Mike Tomlin, and now the Steelers are going to play that bully brand of ball that would appear in 2023 at least. But as we say, whatever team you root for, these are the good times. You have 4 months at least before there will be any cold hard evidence that your team didn't draft well. Enjoy the summertime, everybody. Let optimism abound, right? Now, if you root for the wrong hockey team, you're already in cold hard reality here. The Florida Panthers came back from down 3-1 to knock off the best regular season team of all time, the Boston Bruins. And Shazier, is the curse of Sposta back? The curse of Sposta, of course, is the weight of being expected to do it. You're supposed to win. That can weigh heavy on the shoulders of a heavy favorite. How say you?
I wouldn't say the curse of Sposta is supposed to happen or is back, but I'm going to quote the great Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal. The one thing they talked about with the Boston Celtics that they have a problem with, and you've seen that the Boston Bruins end up having a problem with it as well. Everybody has good players. Every NFL team, every NHL team, every basketball team, they have good players. If you mess around and keep them in the mix, they're going to find a way to swoop in and steal a win. And then that's exactly what the Panthers did. They were down 3-1. They swooped in and got a win. And it's like, oh, we have hope. And once you have hope, when you're a grown man that's getting paid just like another grown man is, we don't give a damn about what you did in the regular season. It's about what you can do now. And the Florida Panthers showed them, man, hey, we're professionals too. We know how to win just like you know how to win. And they went out there. Boston was playing around. They kept them in the mix, and they gave the Panthers hope, and the Panthers exposed them. And, hey, what did Michael Jordan and them used to say? it don't mean a thing if you ain't got that ring.
True enough. And if you're quoting great philosophers, Andy Dufresne, when he was in lockup, his big thing, like you just said, is hope. Now, Red did not believe in hope. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with my future, but what I've seen from these NBA playoffs and the NHL playoffs is, why am I ever going to watch a regular season of anything ever again? They clearly have no meaning. The players don't abide by it. You'll see what, from the Warriors to the Lakers to the Florida Panthers and so on, that it was irrelevant where you finished as long as you get into the mix. That's the big idea there. I don't know what Andy Dufresne has to do with it at this point, but I hear your noise there. Hey, Star Wars Return of the Jedi is making a comeback to theaters 40 years after it was first released. Shazier, you'll be unsurprised to learn I saw it at its first release. I also saw Star Wars in its first release when I was a wee lad. This episode, you mentioned it at the top, May 4th is when it comes out. How are you celebrating this Star Wars Day?
So the day before Star Wars is my anniversary. So I'm spending time with my wonderful wife on the day before Star Wars
Like
Day.
Queen Amidala and Anakin Skywalker, if you will.
Yep. So the day before, I don't know if it's exactly like that, but hey, I'm gonna spend some time with my wife. Then actually the day of Star Wars Day, I have a fundraiser that I'm having, and it's a golf fundraiser that I'm partnering with a local hospital network here, and we're going to have golf on the 5th. So we having a dinner on the 4th. May the 4th be with you, and then we're going to have the golf outing on the Friday. So I'm going to have a good time. What about
I love it. Why don't, here's an idea, take it or leave it. You should have two competitors take out their drivers and do a lightsaber duel over dinner. That'd be fun. I bet people would think that was a fun, like they have dinner theater, like let that be it, like
Hey,
Vader
man,
v. Kenobi.
you can fly up and you can try. I'm going to see how that work out.
Okay. I'll meet you halfway. I'd love to do it. Yes, happy 4th, happy Star Wars Day to everybody. Happy anniversary to you, Ryan Shazier. And that's it for this episode of Don't Call It a Comeback.
Make sure to follow, rate, and review the show on wherever you're listening. Hey, also check us out on YouTube on the Wondery channel. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any episodes. See you all next week.
Don't call it a comeback. I've been waiting on this moment my whole life. Can't call it a comeback. Everybody to your feet, make arenas rise. Yeah, I'm saying from the left to right, we get it on tonight. We do it all, but we don't back down. Just give me one shot, one chance, I'ma take it. Fixing up the game, but these records I keep on breaking.